In this episode, we'll have a look at literally every single tool inside a CLO. If you are at the beginning of your journey inside a CLO, you are going to want to stick to only the S tier ones, which represent the absolute basic tools that are required for you to design inside a CLO. Let's not waste any extra time and jump right into the tier list. Simulation tool, default. It allows the garment patterns to fall towards the floor and drape onto avatars. We use it all the time during all stages, including the design and animation stage. Little known fact, you can alter the properties of the simulation after left-clicking the tool from the lower right panel. You can change how the gravity works, have less, or even change it to another direction. S tier. Fitting accurate fabric. It is recommended mainly for high-quality exports and animations, but it's a lot slower compared to the default sim. Thus, we have it placed in the B tier. Fast GPU. It sucks. We never use it. It will screw up your simulation 99% of the time, and then you have to redo all of your progress. It's only good for CLO to put in their spec sheet. The good news is, if you need a computer to run CLO and are budget restricted, you're better off purchasing one with great CPU and without a dedicated GPU if you only plan to use it for design and CLO. Select/move, keyboard shortcut Q. In any 3D software, you'll find yourself selecting and moving objects all of the time. During the simulation, the icon changes to a pinch icon, which allows you to move the cloth during the simulation as you would in reality. This is also S tier, as it allows you to arrange the garment to your desire. Select mesh brush. The tool allows you to select the actual mesh of the garment, and you can pin, subdivide, freeze, or solidify it. The effect only applies to the area selected, and it can be used in both the 3D and the 2D window. We only use the pin function in our day-to-day work. You can use the pin to fix a poorly draped garment when it's going through the arm or the leg of the avatar. B tier. Select mesh box. Similar to the brush, it allows you to select the mesh through a binding box. Another difference is that it automatically switches to the mesh view by default. It also unlocks some different functionality, which is in the form of the flip horizontal and vertical, but it doesn't work. So for that reason alone, we're gonna give it a D tier. Select mesh lasso. Use it to select and pin or subdivide or do whatever, and do it through a less intuitive lasso. D tier. Pin box. It allows you to select the mesh, but instead of having to right click and select the pin option, it automatically creates a pin for you. C tier. Pin lasso. Use it to select and pin your mesh. C tier. Edit Styleline. When people imagine how a 3D clothing software would even work, they automatically think of something like the Edit Styleline tool, where you can just drag your design in 3D space and it results in clean, ready-to-use patterns. It's an interesting concept, but the execution is flawed, because every single time we use it, we end up with different lengths for the segments sewn together, and that is a deal breaker because you'll have to do a lot of cleanup work. And for that reason, we'll give it an F tier. Scale Styleline. Compared to the Edit Styleline, it seems to work more accurately, but we haven't found much use for it. I can see using them in conjunction if the Edit Styleline didn't suck so hard. Fingers crossed for a future iteration. E tier. Move Styleline. It simply doesn't work. It changes the length of the segment, and you'll end up wasting more time correcting, and in case you forget, it can really ruin your design. F tier again. Draw Styleline. This one works quite well, and it is beginner friendly. Use it to cut the patterns in the 3D window. B tier. Edit Sewing. Shortcut B. It's one of the most useful tools in CLO, and here's what you can do with it. You can check your current sewn segments and figure out what else needs to be sewn. You can use it to correct a sewing length that doesn't match. You can press Ctrl B after selecting a sewing line to reverse the sewing between two segments. After selecting a sewing line, you can also change the angle and the fold strength. You can also tick on tension, change the ratio and the strength in order to achieve this result. After you've matched the length of a sewing line, you can right-click on a sewn segment and add a point either at the start of the sewing line or at the end. Last but not least, you can use it to delete a sewing line. S tier. Segment sewing. Pretty self-explanatory. It allows you to sew two segments together. It's mainly used when you know that the two segments are equal in length, and it's probably the quickest tool to use. A tier. Segment sewing MN. It allows you to sew more segments together, and it gives you a tiny bit more control compared to the segment sewing tool. But that extra control is also why we don't recommend it. It's overly complicated. D tier. Free sewing. Shortcut M. One of the most intuitive and useful sewing tools. It's very easy to apply. You select where you want your first sewing line to start, then where you want your first sewing line to end, and you do the exact same thing with the other segment to which it connects. We love it because it's a tool that can be used by both beginners and advanced users. For that reason, S tier. MN Free Sewing. This is an extremely advanced tool and it offers the ultimate control. Here's how it works. You start creating your sewing line. It can start and end anywhere, and you can add as many components to the first sewing line as you like. When you are done, you press enter. You can see the color changing from the default green to a turquoise, meaning that your first sewing line is defined. Then you start selecting the segment or segments where you want it to connect. It can again connect to as many components as you need. When your selection is complete, it should show a blue dot at the end, indicating that everything is matching in length. Press enter. If you're just starting out, stick to the free sewing tool and do multiple sewing lines rather than a complete sewing job. A tier. Auto sewing tool. We're just not sure when this tool would come in handy, because you do need to use the arrangement points to place all the pattern pieces in 3D space correctly for it to even work, and sometimes it simply doesn't. C tier. Tack tool. It allows you to tack your garment without sewing it. It's a stylization tool that you will use with every project. A tier. Tack on avatar. Similar to the tack tool, but it connects your garment to your avatar. B tier. Fold arrangement. It allows you to bend a pattern piece along an internal line or a sewing line. As you can see in the property editor box, it also changes your fold angle value. But you should actually never use it, because we've only shown you the best case scenario. If we were to fold arrange the entire segment and not the two components, this is what happens. Therefore, we actually recommend that you use the superimpose over function, which is available when you select through the move key and right click. That one's gonna give you accurate results every single time. So why does this tool exist? I don't know. F tier. Fold 3D garment. A niche tool which is used mainly for presentation and not design. Here's how it works. Let's select the male t-shirt, the default one. Select all of the components, rotate them 90 degrees, bring them to the ground, simulate. Then we open the 3D fold tool. This option here is going to allow the garment to spread out. This option is going to make it more malleable for folding. This option allows you to select your folding line. You double click where you want it to end. And then this gizmo is going to allow you to fold it. You can create a fold, draw your lines, select the components. There we go. If you want to just do one specific pattern piece, you would do it through this tool. You select your pattern piece, you press enter, and then you draw the line as you did in the previous tool. And it's simply going to fold this arm. D tier. Reset 2D arrangement. It resets your 2D arrangement based on the layout of the 2D window. C tier. Reset 3D arrangement. It resets your 3D arrangement based on the pattern pieces that have been placed with the 3D arrangement points. If you press the reset 2D arrangement, it will erase your 3D arrangement, and those dependencies are the reason we never use those two tools. E tier. Redrape 3D arrangement. The documentation is a bit hazy on this one, and we can't seem to find a purpose for it. From what we can gather, after you've done a good simulation, CLO considers your garment draped. If you introduce a mistake, use the Redrape button. Or fuck it, if CLO doesn't bother to explain it, maybe don't use it. F tier. High-res garment. When you use this tool, it decreases your particle size, meaning that you have more particles in the same area, meaning that your simulations will be more accurate, but they will slow down your computer. The problem with this tool is that you can do that manually by selecting all the pattern pieces and inputting another value for the particle distance, and it might be just as quick. So D tier. Low-res garment, similar situation here. It increases your particle distance for all the pattern pieces. Again, we prefer doing that manually. D tier. Edit measure avatar. It allows you to select and read one of the CLO standard measures on the avatar, as well as select and delete a measurement that you've created. B tier. Basic circumference measure and surface circumference measure avatar. There are two tools that seemingly do the same thing. This tool requires that you draw 3 points on the avatar, and it will create a circumference measurement based on them. The difference being that the surface one, compared to the basic one, will stick literally on the skin of the avatar, whereas the other one will do an average, so it might not be as accurate. S tier. Basic tape measure and surface tape measure. Again, a set of tools that do exactly the same thing. Press once where you want your measurement to start and the second time to finish it. B tier. Attach to measure. For styling your avatar, it doesn't get much more intuitive than this. When it comes to creating a pair of trousers, you can attach them to your avatar using this technique to get prettier results and not have them slacking. You can do the same with sleeves, beanies, and much more. It requires a measurement to be created by one of the tape tools presented just before. S tier. Linear measure. It allows you to create a measurement on the avatar that does not run on the surface of the skin, rather, it directly connects the 2 points of measure. C tier. Height measure. It requires a single point and it measures the distance from the floor to that very point. C tier. Linear measure garment. It requires 2 points and it allows you to measure the distance between them. C tier. Circumference measurement. This one is very cool as it creates a circle around your selection point. A tier. Edit measure garment. In conjunction with the circumference measurement, you can right-click the measurement and select Cut or Traces Internal Line to create a cut on the pattern that will make your item of clothing perfectly parallel to the ground. A tier. This episode is part of the GRMNT Masterclass, which is available for pre-purchase on grmnt.com/learn. 3D pen garment. Use it to create a trace line onto your 2D pattern from the 3D window. D tier. Edit 3D pen. Use it to view your 3D pen lines and read their measurements. D tier. 3D base pen. Use it to free draw trace lines onto your pattern through the 3D window. We've used it in the past for quick pre-visualization. You can always convert the lines to internal lines and use them to cut and alter your pattern. B tier. 3D pen avatar. It's a great tool for experimentation, but the results will most likely require alterations. Use it to create shapes onto your avatar, which will become pattern pieces. We recommend that you connect them in order to get more accurate results. A tier. Flatten. It's a tool that works in conjunction with the 3D pen avatar, and it allows you to translate your 3D drawn shape from the avatar into the pattern piece. Left click within the space once it's highlighted in blue, and after it turns yellow, press enter. The pattern piece will show up in the 2D window, and it is now usable to develop your garment. A tier. Edit texture 3D. Use it to alter the position, angle, or size of a texture on a single piece of the garment. Or if you change it from the upper right corner on the entire fabric. It is also available in the 2D window with the same exact capabilities. S tier. Graphic. Use it to add decals independent of your main texture. S tier. Transform graphic. Use it to alter the position, rotation, or size of the graphic on the surface of the pattern. You can also use it to duplicate a graphic by using Ctrl+C and Ctrl+V. S tier. Button tool. It's pretty self-explanatory. Use it to add buttons to your pattern. S tier. Buttonhole tool. Again, use it to add buttonholes to your pattern. S tier. Select Move button. Use it to alter the position of your buttons or buttonholes. S tier. Fasten Button. Use it to lock the button to the buttonhole. We never recommend using it because it is quite unstable. You want to place the buttons where aesthetically they make more sense and avoid this tool altogether. F tier. Zipper tool. It's not quite F tier, as it is kinda usable in the right circumstances, but the zipper tool is not intuitive and it will cause a lot of issues. Here's how you use it. You left click on where you want it to start, drag till you find your endpoint and double click. Then you left click on the segment where you want it to connect, drag, and find the blue dot which indicates the correct length match. Click 100 times till you see it starting to load. We're kidding, it should be twice. You can alter the properties of the zipper with your select tool after you click the zipper. You can change its position along the track, you can change the color of the teeth, the color of the tape, the shape and materials of the puller and stopper, but when it's all said and done, the zipper is not part of your pattern pieces and it will not allow you to adjust it during simulation, thus rendering the tool useless. It will cause unwanted collisions, it will slow down your design process. Instead of using a zipper, we recommend you actually sew your components where you want your zipper to be added. E tier. Piping. It adds a pipe on the edge of a fabric. B tier. Edit piping. Use it to alter the length and position of your piping as well as to get access to the property editor of the piping where you can change the fabric width and particle distance. B tier. Binding. Use it to add binding to your segments. Similar to how the piping one works, only difference being that it needs to start from a segment point and end on a segment point. B tier. Select binding. Use it to access the property editor for the binding. B tier. Press. Use it to flatten bulged seam lines when more than 2 layers are sewn together. C tier. Transform pattern. Shortcut A. This is one of those tools that you'll have to use all the time inside a CLO. You can select patterns with it. You can scale them horizontally, vertically, or diagonally, which means in all directions at the same time. You can select a pattern, right click on it, and find all of the other options which this tool unlocks. Flip, rotate, order, solidify, strengthen, freeze. It works in both the 3D window as well as the 2D window. And it also works on internal lines. You can select this line, scale it this way, scale it vertically. This tool has endless uses, and it also opens up the property editor of the pattern piece that you've selected. If you want to select multiple, hold down Shift and click whichever one you want to select, or you can press Ctrl A and select all the pattern pieces at the same time. Again, you can scale them on whichever axis you want. This tool you definitely have to know. Edit pattern, shortcut Z. Another extremely useful tool. Use it to move or alter a segment or a segment point. Press Shift as you're moving your selection to get a horizontal or vertical alteration. Right click as you are dragging in order to input your precise value by which you want to move said segment or point. Use Shift as you are dragging and press right click to combine the two functions. S tier. Transform point segment. Is the same as the edit pattern tool with the added functionality of scaling a segment, which we'd never use in our day-to-day. It has more visual clutter, so avoid. F tier. Edit curve point. Use it to add or remove curve points from a segment. When this tool is not selected, the point, in red, will not be visible. Out of sight, out of mind. S tier. Edit curvature. It works similar to the edit curve point, but it doesn't actually show you the point it's creating, and it allows you a lot less control over shaping your curve. Use the edit curve point instead. Seriously. F tier. Smooth curve. Another useless tool. Connect 2 points of a segment, then alter the shape of the newly created line and curve it to obtain your new result. F tier. Why the fuck does it have to be so complicated? F tier. Add point, split line. Use it to add segment points. Little known fact, right click on a segment to jump directly into splitting it. S tier. Fullness point. Use it to add fullness to your pattern while keeping your connecting segment the same length. B tier. Fullness segment. Similar to the fullness point, but a lot more intuitive, and in some cases it will help you achieve better results. B tier. Polygon. Shortcut H. This tool allows you to draw outside an existing pattern, and once you close your drawing, a pattern piece will be created in the 2D window. S tier. Rectangle. Shortcut S. Very useful to get a quick starting shape that you can expand on. It gives you the option to input your width and height, which is very useful for simple rectangular pattern pieces. A tier. Ellipse. For that niche case where you do need a perfect circle created, there's the ellipse tool. We only used it once or twice. B tier. Spiral. Make a spiral. E tier. Internal polygon line. One of the most useful tools, it allows you to draw an internal line within your pattern, an internal line that you can use to cut your pattern, sew it to other components, add elastic to it, add a fold to it, etc. The internal lines are a solid base for the entire design process. S tier. Internal rectangle. Similar to the rectangle tool, but instead it applies it to a pattern and it creates a rectangle out of internal lines. A tier. Internal ellipse. It forms an ellipse out of internal lines. B tier. Dart. It forms a dart within the pattern, which is automatically cut out and sewn together. Quite neat. A tier. Base polygon. Since we don't see the point of having baselines in the first place, we wouldn't recommend any of the baseline tools, but we will still do the walkthrough. Draw a baseline polygon within a pattern piece. Baselines are only there for reference. C tier. Base rectangle. Create a baseline polygon within a pattern. D tier. Base ellipse. Create a baseline ellipse. D tier. Base dart. Create a dart out of baseline. Blah 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 blah. D tier. Trace. The trace line allows you to convert the dreaded baselines into internal lines. Select any baseline and press enter to have it converted to an internal line. S tier. It's only S tier because it fixes the mistakes of having baselines, but sometimes you might open a project and they might have baselines by default, so therefore you need to know how the trace works. Notch. Adds a reference notch onto the pattern. The notch can also be used when you're sewing, so it's not purely just for reference. A tier. Seam allowance. Once your pattern is done, the first step to get it ready for production is to mark your seam allowance on every single segment of your pattern pieces. You can select all and give a general 10mm seam allowance as a quick base, and where you do require different values, you can left click the specific segment and change the values from the property editor tab. S tier. Walk pattern. A tool for visualizing how the patterns will match up. Click on a point where you want your walking to begin, and on a second one from a different pattern piece to see how they align across the selected segments. C tier. Point of measure. Use it to measure anything within your pattern piece. Click where you want your measure to start and where you want it to end. C tier. Edit point of measure. Edit your previously created measurement within your pattern. C tier. We're only giving them C tiers because we usually measure with the internal lines instead of using this set of tools. Pattern annotation. Use it to write on your pattern notes that do not show up in your design. B tier. Edit annotation. Use it to move, rotate, or delete the previously mentioned annotation. B tier. Pleats. Say you want to create a pair of trousers that has those pleats within the fabric. You would select the tool, press from the top of the pattern, very close to the edge, and then select the bottom of the pattern, and then you select the side where you want your pleats to form. In my case, the right side. I increase the number of units that I want to have to the maximum. At some point it's gonna crash, so just decrease it to one value below. Press OK, and then we're going to have our pattern pieces. But the problem is that, as you can see, it has extended out my pattern by a huge amount. And this pair of trousers no longer fits. So using this tool feels to me like a bit of a niche application. Say if you are creating a skirt and the overall amount of fabric that you're adding does not matter that much. So what is the correct approach of doing a pair of pants like this one? I would start by creating a line that runs vertical on the pattern. Then I press Z, right click, offset as internal line. I'm going to choose a distance of 12 mm in my case. Increase the number of offsets until it reaches the very edge of your pattern piece. Press OK, Z, right click again. This time reverse the direction, decrease the number so it fits perfectly within the pattern, press OK. The last thing that we have to do is go inside of the menu, select the pleats fold, and draw a line that starts from the left side all the way to the right side, double click, press OK. And this is going to alter the fold angle between those pleats. As you can see, one's on 0, one's on 360, one's on 0, one's on 360. And now if I simulate, check out what happens. In case you can't see them well enough, all you have to do is select the pattern pieces and decrease the particle distance down to 5. The pleats tool, kinda niche, we're gonna place it in the C tier, whereas the pleats fold tool, a lot more useful I'd say, B tier. What about the pleats sewing tool? Well, this one works best in conjunction with the pleats tool, the first one that we've used, the C tier. Edit grading tool. After having multiple grades created, it allows you to adjust the point of a segment by selecting it and then using the arrow keys to shift your selection. B tier. Auto grading. It automatically creates a grade depending on your avatar size. The avatar you used has to be the default CLO3D avatar, otherwise it won't work. A tier. Check sewing length. A great tool that highlights whenever you fuck up and have non-matching segments. Lower the value to between 2 to 5 millimeters to get truly accurate results and end up with better products. A tier. Steam. Use it whenever you are styling your product, when a certain area requires a shrinking of the fabric. It will usually not translate to the real world, so use with caution. B tier. Seam taping. Use it to bond based on your segment lines. C tier. Segment Topstitch. Add the top stitch to a segment. S tier. Edit top stitch. It gives you access to the property editor of the selected top stitches. S tier. Free top stitch. Add top stitches to a specific area of a segment. It gives you more control over where you apply your top stitch at the cost of wasting a lot of time. B tier. Seamline Topstitch. Similar to the free top stitch, only difference being that it has a top stitch to both sides of a sewn segment. C tier. Segment Puckering. Adds a puckering effect to your segment. D tier. Free Puckering. Adds puckering to a specific area of a segment. D tier. Seamline Puckering. Adds puckering to both sides of a sewn segment. E tier. Edit puckering. Choose and edit or remove a puckered area. D tier. Set sublayer. It creates a set of rules for the pattern pieces which relates to which should be sitting above and which should be sitting below. A tier. Fill tool. It creates an identical pattern piece underneath the one you've selected and it fills the layers with down. To make it work properly, you have to input a weight which is distributed between all the patterns you've selected based on their relative size, a quilting distance, which is the shortest distance within your quilt, and you can tick on realistic quilting line for more definition. Your quilt will also be dependent on the internal lines of your segment. A tier.